This is Fantasy Football Today from CBSSports.com.
Hey everyone, we welcome you to an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Football Today here on CBSSports.com for CBS Local Sports. I'm Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard. It's Week 14, guys. It's playoff time.
Yeah.
All right, start or sit. We'll tell you who to start and sit at each position. Quarterbacks, Dave, Russell Wilson. We're starting them at San Francisco.
Yeah, and a lot of the times that we talk about a guy to start, we'll give a lot of good statistical data to back it up. But I don't have it for Russell Wilson. In fact, the 49ers have held each of the last 5 quarterbacks they've faced to 16 or fewer fantasy points. I just like the guy. I think he's outstanding, and I think if we're asking him to come up with 2 touchdowns in a game where there's going to be some extra advantages for the Seahawks here because of things going on the other side of the ball for the 49ers that could put Wilson in the offense in good field position, I think he gets there. I think he has a good game and enough to get to 20 fantasy points. I like him.
Meanwhile, same game, Colin Kaepernick hasn't been as good as Russell Wilson this year for sure, and he has the tough matchup with Seattle. Sit him.
I think you can. You know, you're talking about a guy in Kaepernick that may not have 2 of his better offensive linemen, Joe Staley and Mike Iupati, dealing with injuries right now. And we've seen Kaepernick, you know, he doesn't necessarily put up the huge monster performances. Did so in week 1. Kind of has really disappeared. Had the Jacksonville game in London. Had a nice game 2 weeks ago. But I think you're seeing a guy right now that is more of a game manager. And the matchup being as tough as it is, Colin Kaepernick, I would expect him to struggle. He's got a very, very bad history in the brief times that he's faced Seattle in his career in the 2 games. Much more turnovers than touchdowns. And I think you're seeing just the way that he is going to play with the quarterbacks available to you. Alex Smith, Carson Palmer, Russell Wilson. These are better quarterbacks than Colin Kaepernick.
Now, Bobby Rainey has struggled recently, but a much better matchup this week, Dave. He's got Buffalo.
We called it when he was going to struggle the last 2 weeks, and we're going to call it that he breaks out of the funk because it's the matchup against the Bills, who have allowed 5 touchdowns to running backs in their last 3 games, 3 just last week to Atlanta. And I think Bobby Rainey is a good talent, and I think the Bucs agree with me because they've given him at least 17 carries each of the last 2 games. And these are against tough matchups, at Detroit, at Carolina. Not a cakewalk for a running back. And Rainey's hung in there, not great numbers, but he turns it around this week.
All right, how about Rashad Jennings? He's been a very pleasant surprise, but a brutal matchup and coming off an injury at the Jets. What do you think about Jennings?
Yeah, I think you get away from Jennings the fact that also Darren McFadden's back in the mix and probably going to take a lot of practice reps because Jennings coming off the concussion on Thanksgiving. I just think there are better running backs available to you. Bobby Rainey being a great example. Monte Ball would be somebody I would start over Rashad Jennings this week as well. I think you're just seeing Jennings, if he doesn't get you the touchdown, what's his numbers going to be? Maybe 6 or 7 fantasy points, but I think that's kind of where he's going to get capped at because the Jets do not allow a lot of rushing touchdowns.
Jamie, Michael Floyd against St. Louis. Start him?
Oh, absolutely. You're talking about a guy now, one yard shy of 3 straight games would have been 100 yards in a row. And you're seeing just the way that he's being used, catching almost everything thrown in his direction, really taking advantage of the single coverage that he's getting because Larry Fitzgerald getting more attention from the defensive backfield. I think you're seeing Michael Floyd now coming to his own. He was a breakout candidate for all of us when the season started, and now he's living up to it with his performance the last 3 weeks. Very good matchup against St. Louis. They allow a lot of production to receivers, mostly number 1 guys. But at this point, you might be able to argue that he's the number 1 guy over Larry Fitzgerald just based on targets and production over the last 3 weeks.
Dave, how about Cecil Shorts? This is a guy that we thought would be a terrible play last week with Joe Hayden covering him. He gets this late touchdown, looking good, but what do you think about this week?
Really saved him. I'm not buying in him unless we're talking PPR league. If we're talking PPR league, then I think that he could be worth 15 fantasy points. But in a standard league, I don't know if he's going to score again. Houston's been actually good against the pass for much of this year. They've allowed a lot of touchdowns, but none in the last 2 weeks to wide receivers. I think Shorts is a guy you can get away from. You can find somebody else out there who could do a little better.
All right, tight ends. Very frustrating position, but always take a look at who's playing the Arizona Cardinals. This week it's St. Louis, and Jared Cook has an opportunity here because the Cardinals stink against tight ends. What do you think about Cook?
Yeah, they made Zach Ertz and Brent Selk like Hall of Famers last week.
Yeah.
And Jared Cook, look, he got off to a great start this season. It was week 1. It was against Arizona. He had 7 catches. He had over 100 yards. He scored 2 touchdowns. Should have been 3 touchdowns, but he fumbled the ball there. And ever since then, but 2 of the last 4 weeks, he's actually turned things around, scored touchdowns in 2 of those 4 games. It's been every other week. Last week was a little bit of a down one. So maybe this week he gets going again, gets that great matchup. I think you're seeing a little rapport developing now between Kellen Clemens and Jared Cook. He's somebody that I'd buy into, and I'd start him this week.
So we're going to say sit Timothy Wright this week, and was he going to catch 3 touchdowns or something like that?
I actually
can't figure this guy out.
Out of the kindness of my heart, I projected a touchdown for Timothy Wright. I don't know why I did. I probably shouldn't have even done that much because he hasn't been reliable for fantasy owners, and he certainly hasn't been the factor in Tampa Bay's offense like I thought he'd be. And I think that Tampa Bay's offense is going to lean heavy on Bobby Rainey. They're going to lean on that ground game. That's why I like Rainey. And Wright's just not going to be a big factor in the game. I think you can find a better tight end. Ladarius Green of the Chargers. Continue to keep an eye on him he's going to be a big factor.
If you need any more fantasy advice, any more of your questions answered, Fantasy Football Today, live noon Eastern, Tuesday through Friday at fantasynews.cbssports.com. Then Sunday morning with Dave, Jamie, Jason Horowitz, and Chad Johnson. And Sunday night, we've got our post-game show with Nando DeFino as well. You can check out our podcasts, our rankings, all that on the website, cbssports.com. This has been an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. For Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg, I'm Adam Azer. Good luck in Week 14.